Guys, welcome again to another session of our training. In this training, what we'll be doing is we'll be reviewing the website we designed for the UPS website we designed, and we'll be going through it section by section to understand in detail what we use to achieve them. So we'll break it down further in this training. So what I want to do right now is to clear what I have on the screen so that we are left with bare minimal components and we can use that idea to understand what is going on. First of all, I want to show you the sections that we have. In a typical website, there are common sections across websites, and you would have noticed it. And those sections are very important because they are labeled, and those labels are what you will use to communicate to other developers or even to know what is going on. So what do I mean by labels? So for example, on the top section of the website, there's what we call the header. If you guys have noticed me doing the templating and doing the column section, I keep using some nomenclature. I keep using header, I keep using navigation, I keep using content, main, sidebar, footer, and what have you. These things are very important because those things are what makes up a website. These are the sections on websites, and you need to know those sections. You need to know where they are, and how you place them determine how attractive your site is going to look. And in all sites, you will notice all these things, if not all of them, but some of them. Currently, this is the header section where you have the logo. Most time, the header section contains your logo and navigation. Sometimes they are separate, depending on the design of the template, what the template it is you are working with. And in this case now, you also have a banner. So this is a banner section where you have the track code, ship, and billing. That's called the banner section. Then after the banner section, most of the time, you then have the content of the website will flow from there downward until you hit a place where you have the footer section. The footer section is like you are ending the site and then you want to conclude on what you are doing. Within the site, there's what we call small components like call to action or cards, which we saw in the while we were building the demo site. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. I told you what I want to achieve with this site is to break it down gradually. I want to bring the CSS outside. Remember that this is CSS designed by header. We've not even done adding CSS through external file before. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we need to do now is to create the file and call it style. We want to carry all this our CSS. We want to take it outside. We don't want it to be in this place again, whereby it's clashing with this place. I want to separate the file in such that the file is separate from the HTML document. That's what we want to achieve right now. There's a tag that helps us to do that. But first of all, let me copy all the CSS out. So it ends at 269 and it starts at 5. Then I take all this out, I put it here. But this is a CSS document standing on its own, similar to HTML document standing on its own. But you can see the site without CSS. Look at how it is. If you've noticed sites like this before, whereby you load it and then it's looking like this, that it shows like this because the CSS has not been downloaded for it to apply to the website so that you can have the beautiful theme that you are having. So how do you then link your CSS to it? How do you link your style sheet to this document? You link it by having the link tag. The link tag has an attribute which is rel. The rel will contain style sheet. So the other attribute you need to specify is the type. So you need to say it's a text. Then finally, you bring in the href. The href is the reference where the file is. The file is called style.css. The only thing that we've put that looks very awkward was these two things. That's the rel. The rel, because this link is used to do more than one thing. this link attribute is used to bring resources outside that is not present in the document and is needed in the HTML document. That is the purpose of a link. It's used to bring other resources into the HTML document. So if you want to bring a CSS file into the document, you have to specify that it's a style sheet here, and the type of the document is a text/CSS. Then most importantly, the reference to the document, which is href. Now that we've been able to do this, what this allows you to do is just a way to put your document outside, your style sheet outside. You will notice that that's the reason why I did not do this in the first place. I didn't separate our style sheet in the first place. All this while we've been doing it here so that we can easily scroll up and make adjustments. That is the reason why I've not done it this way all this time, but it's fine. So it's showing you, more things you can do, and you can see how advanced it is. In fact, that makes it easy for you to easily style another template that is that has another design, because you might decide that, oh, you want to change the design of this UPS to be something else, to have a different kind of design. Maybe you want to upgrade the design to something else. You can actually use another style. So let's go ahead with the explanation of what we did and how we make all these things happen. So let's go to the top section. This is the top section of the page. And I said I want to comment all these things out so that we can see what's happening. Another thing I want to do is I want to create an helper class. I want to be seeing my helper class here. Okay, let's go and put it here. This is our helper class, and the purpose of the helper class is to just stress on what is going on here on our screen. That's the purpose of the helper class, to stress what's on the screen so that you can see. How we were able to do this was using grid. We used what? We used grid to do this. We use grid to design these components. By default, without the helper class, you should be able to draw out the areas that should be available. You should be able to manually imagine what are the columns and the rows available in this grid. So I'm going to kind of try to recreate this again. So I'm going to try and recreate it again. The requirement of a grid is that you have a parent and siblings and children. That's the requirement. So I'm gonna do here, and what is gonna be the parent? I call it head container. That was the idea of that's the reason why I do head container. But I'm gonna do X so that it doesn't pick the style automatically. I'm gonna do X so that it doesn't pick the style automatically. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I want to provide the children. So the children, I don't need to give it a name for now. So if you see, I have many children, and the purpose of having all these children is such that I can give them a tag or make them a section in the navigational bar. That's the purpose of having all that. So what I want to do right now is to make it in such a way that we can see that at work. Okay. So now in this section, I was able to, this is not a grid yet, but the definition of a grid is that you have one parent and so many siblings. So we are still going here. So we have the logo, right? The logo area. I told you guys that I label all these things so that I know where I am. I have the logo. What else do we have? We have the link or the nav section. So let's use different name. So I say logo area. I want to use different name because I want to restyle it. Logo area. Then I have links. Link 1. We have 2 links on what we were saying before. So let me make it visible as well, because we're about to duplicate what we are doing. So let me make it visible. So on top, I want to replicate what I did on the bottom, so we can have a visual effect of what's going on. So I have logo area. I have link 1. Then the one on the second part is link 2. I have link 2. That's the link on top. Then on the bottom, I have where? I have the login link. So I have four sections. This section 1 for logo, this section 2, this section 3, and this section 4. 4 sections. So in your mind, you need to be able to build the grid. And looking at this, you have how many rows and how many columns. Those need to play out in your mind. You need to define those, and then you move on from that. Using the template area, because it's template area kind of grid. The video that talked about grid, we did 3 examples, but the examples I'm going to use, which is the one I mentioned to you that is very easy, is using template area rather. That's one that is easy to do. And because we want to use templates to arrange all the elements, you see these 4 elements that are just standing by themselves. We want to arrange them so that they will take place, they will take their position. That's the purpose. So how do we go ahead? First of all, we need to give them what? Their name. We need to give the class, we need to name it by class so that we can use that class to target the code we want to go and write. Right? So that's what we want to do. So I'm targeting this one, I'm creating for this, I'm creating for this. Now that we've done that, we've given it a class. By the way, we're going to write our CSS here so that it's easy for us to, so instead of moving back and forth. So let's prepare our style to write our code. The declaration I said, because this is our X container, but let me go ahead and do this one first. So if you do this like this, you need to specify the display type. That is what? It's a grid. That's the first thing, so that the system knows that it's a grid. The next thing is to say the template area. This is where the magic happens. So what's the area? So you didn't define the area because you've not given them name yet. So you can't define the area. Remember, you need to go and define these names: logo area, link area, link to, login link. You need to define it, else you can't just put this name like this. It won't know what logo area means. So you need to define it. The CSS need to understand what this is. So how do you define this now? To define it, we need to style each and every element here. So let's go ahead and define each and every element. Let's start with logo area. Once you define this, how do you define it? You just say grid area. Like it's an area on the grid. And what's the name called? It's called what? It's called logo area. That's the name of what it's called in the grid. Then let's go ahead and define the rest. So to define the rest, you just repeat the same thing. Link 1 is called link 1, right? Then link 2 is called link 2. I told you about this, we've already passed this. And then the last link is called login link. Then we are done with this. Don't worry, the whole thing is taking shape above, but let's start explaining how it will take shape. So how it takes shape, the magic works here where you have the grid template area. If you have it blank like this, nothing happens because you've not defined where things are going to sit. You need to specify how they are going to sit. So how do you specify that? Is by using this template area. There's a way you have to define it, and the way it works is that you have to first define column and rows. How many rows do you need to have? Rows goes from left to right. So this is our first row like this, our second row, and our third row. Is a third row, is 3 rows. So if you want to define one row, you just need to put a value here, kind of. You need to put a value. Value can be logo area, link 1, link 2, or login link. Based on what you are seeing, you need to put something there. But let's start with, since the logo is what we are seeing first, we can start with logo. That's the logo area. That defines one by one. What that one by one means is that you have one column by one row. So remember, we are going to 3 columns. So how do you have the second column? Rather, we are going to 3 rows. So how do you add the second row to it? Just duplicate this one. So this makes it what? The second row. How do you have the third row? Just do this. You now have the third row linked to it. So you now have 3 rows already. So these 3 by 1 column. So if you want to create the next column, you go ahead and put the next area you want to target. So we've done logo area. The next thing we want to put is this link, and that's called link 1. So let's say link 1 is like this, it's like this, It's like this. So what that is doing is that it's putting logo all the way and link all the way. So let's go ahead and say the next one is link to, link to, link to, link to. Even though I know it's wrong, I'm just trying to show you how it is coming up together. So let's go ahead and put link 3. I'm just showing you how it's coming up together, just to show you that this is how templates work. You can see how it turns everything to templates. Even though it's 3 rows, it doesn't matter because it looks as if there's no points to demarcate each of the column from each other. So you just put everything on a straight line. Now, we are trying to mimic this template that we have here. So this is where we need to put your thinking cap on and start doing the right thing. First of all, it is just going to be 3 columns, not 4 columns. I did the 4 columns so that we can see what's happening there. So first of all, you want to be able to, the logo is defined like this, which is fine. This top one here doesn't seem to be existing here on this section. So how do you clean this logo up and don't let anything take its space? Is by using a what? A dot. So if you use a dot, it will not really matter. So that space will be kept. It will be kept blank for logo. So you will see the result later. So once you use a dot, that space is kept for login area, for logo area. The next part you want to make sure is that because we want to make this whole top, the whole top, you want to make it for what? For the link 2. So the next thing, you also clear for link 1. The plan is to make the whole top link 2. So we are not using this other one. We are not using it because it's 3 column. We are not using it. So what we've been able to do is to make the whole top to be link 2. The second column is logo area and the one on the bottom is logo area. What follows is link 1, which is here, what we've provided here, and what follows after link 1 here is, so link 1 is here. Okay, so we need to put the login link. This link 1, which is here in the middle, and you can also either ignore the link 1 on the bottom by putting a dot so that that space is recognized as not being anything, even though that's not what we did here, but I'm just showing you an alternative. Then on the bottom, you want it to be the login link here. So you can copy this one and put this one like this. So look at the result of what you have. You have the login area sitting right here. You have the link 1 on top. You can see that the link 1 is supposed to be sitting in the middle. So what you can do is that you can repeat link 1 here so that it will take the full space. So you can see the difference now. Link 1 is taking that full space. And then you can also merge, you can either merge the logo up or you can leave it like this. Then you can bring this link 1 down with CSS. So this is the results that we have. Now that you have this result, you can go ahead and start putting the content inside it. So the major heavy lifting is how to design this grid, and that's what I just did now. I just designed this grid now. Do you have any question before I move on to the next thing? Look at the results. If you look at the results, you will understand. Look at the results we have. So what this dot app did is to match this top. Imagine we repeat this one. Look at it. If you repeat it like this, it will not give us the desired result. In the sense that it won't be pushed up. Do you get that? It won't give you the desired results that you want. You can leave it like this, but the problem is this. Let me tell you the problem you are going to face with this design. Problem you are going to face is that you will then manually push this link 1 down. You manually push it down. But with this now, you don't need to worry. It has been pushed down by itself, and the logo has been pushed down by itself. And so you can just continue.
Why do we have logo area link 1 and login link instead of dot login link?
Okay, like here, Abi. Like this.
Yes.
And let's try it now. Let's see what we have now. And let me show you why I didn't use it. So if you have this, by the time you start adding your logo area, if I add my logo area here, if I add the logo here, it will push this one too down, that this login link will be going away. If I put this one here now, right, it will push this thing down. It will not look like this template anymore. If the logo sits in here, what do you think will happen? This one will go down too much now. This guy will go down too much because the logo itself will fill in a gap. And when it's trying to fill in a gap, it will push this whole line. It will push it down. Then the login link will just stand by itself. So what will sit here? This space that is left now, this dot, what will sit in there? Nothing. The template will not look like it's supposed to be again. So that's why that I fill it in with this one, so that it opens up this whole space, and I can manually move this one to sit down, and I can say this one too, I want this place to be merged. So the idea is I'm merging it. Is a way to merge the column. Do you get? I'm merging the columns together. Merging. So that is a method of merging. Okay, so we're looking at so we're looking at sizing. Yeah, the sizing part. So the sizing part, we use grid template. That's this column part. We use it to, and I'm explaining in my previous videos that you could just do space and put the next thing you want to put. So if you use I to gauge this one now, you can say this one can be 50% or 40% of the rest of the things, and that's this section. Then the next part can be 50% or something, even though I don't want to use percentage to handle the whole thing. So this is what I just did. Notice the last edge, it's not complete. So that's why I like using the 1F and whatever, the FR. I like the FR very well. If you look at the distance between this and this, like this one here and this one here, they look 50-50 kind of. So I can just do 1FR and 1FR. So it just fits in. Just fits into, and I discovered that you can even put 1.2 FR kind of. You can actually do this kind of a thing. So you can do 1.1 FR. So the way FR work is very beautiful. What that means is that you see these 100 pixels. Whatever is left, this guy, this FR fraction takes care of it, and it does the job fantastically. It takes care of it. There's no leftover. There's no short. So you can have, so that's the way it works compared to percentage. So the next thing is also, let me do 1.1. So the next thing is putting the image in. So those ones are straightforward. But the one I also need to explain, which looks mysterious, is the link. This link here, how I made it to lie down like this. So let's go ahead. I won't do the ones that you know, like bringing images in. I won't do that. I'll just focus on things that I know that are quite different from what we've been doing before. So let's go ahead and let me show you what I mean by that. Can you mute your section, please? Please mute your session. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that. I said in the previous video that any link, any menu system you want to build it with lists. Any menu system you want to build it with what? With a list. So I'm going to show you the magic I did here, or what I did here, so to say. And the reason why you should build with list is very simple. Obviously, link are in this form like this. The way I've presented it is either that they are going like this or they are going down. Most sites that you go to, you see the link like this, and I'm going to beautify it more in the demo I'm going to do. We are copying a site, so we have to copy what the site design looks like. So now that we have time to play with our own design and I want to show you, I can just do something different. So I'm using link 1. Notice that we're inside link 1, and in link 1 I'm saying this is what I'm monitoring. I told you before, use list for your link. You need to be able to convert this to this. How do you do that? Let's go ahead and do that. First of all, we are using link 1, so we can style everything in link 1. We can use link 1 class to target any of this and do whatever we want. So take note of the fact that we are using link 1 class to target anything we want to do from henceforth. So let's go ahead and do link 1. So this is inside link 1. Let's put our code here, or rather, let's go ahead and start putting our code here. First of all, you need to tell this guy what is happening here. A list is a block element. This is a list, li. It's a block element. You need to tell it that it should change from being a block element to inline element, because what do we want to do? We want to create a horizontal menu. If it's a vertical menu, that's another thing entirely, but it's horizontal. You want to create a horizontal menu. So you need to tell it. So how do you target this li? To target this li, you target it based on what? The fact that there's a class here. You will use relationship, the parent, being the fact that it's a child of an li, a link class. You use it to target it. So how do you go ahead with that? So you do link 1. And how do you target any of the child of an element class? Is just by putting the name of the element you want to target. By just simply doing this, you are targeting li automatically, because this li that is only tied to, that is surrounded by this parent class element, that is what you are targeting. Instead of just giving it a class name and start targeting it manually, you can use the fact that it already has a parent class to target it, and this is how to go about it. What did I say we're going to change? We're changing the display property from it being blocked to what? To inline. And immediately you do that, you can see that you are getting a very good result that makes sense already, right? So the next thing you need to worry about is how much distance you need to give to all these things to make it look like, what you are trying to copy. Then you can start putting space and things like that. So let's go ahead and start putting space. So you can use your pad, the block element already. Now you can use padding and margin and what have you. So I'm gonna do 10 px. So this is a shortcut, 010. So you can see the spacing it gives us. But what I want to do right now is I want to do another kind of menu system, so that you will see the difference from what we have here to what we want to have. This has given us what we need. The rest of the things are just styling, but let's go ahead and style a different kind of menu. Now that we've been able to do this, what else do we want to target? We want to target when a mouse over as, or before we target that, let's design the element to look somehow, the anchor to look in a particular way. So where is the anchor, which is this A? This is the A. So how do we target this A? The same way we target the Li, we can target the A like that. So we'll do link, that's the anchor. Then instead of using Li, we use anchor. So anything we style here will only affect the anchor element for class that are within the link 1 class. So let's go ahead. So what do I want to do? I want to do this kind of effects on it, this kind of design. So I will say background color. I'll do yellow, right? So you can see your change immediately. I want to do padding, 010. Again, I said I'm doing something different, so bear with me. Then I want to do border radius. Border radius, let's say 4. Then I want to provide a border to it, 1 px. Okay, let me not put border. Should I put, okay, let's go ahead and put border. But before I put border, I need to copy that color so that there's consistency. Okay, so I want the border solid, and the color should be a little bit darker than what we have there. Okay, so this is what we have. But of course, you can see that the color is not really the color of the icon. You need to take it away from being blue to, let's say, black. Then you need to remove the underline. Text decoration, none. So you can see that the menu system of the site is changing entirely. Then what I want to do is, when I take my mouse over it, I want it to change from what it is now to the next thing. And that's how we're able to effect this. When you take your mouse over this, you can see the difference. I want to do the same thing. When I take my mouse over this, I want it to change to something else. How do you do that? You target the over effect on the elements. So how do you do that? You repeat the same thing you have here, but this time around, instead of having it sitting like this, you present this over effects on it. We already did this in CSS. So what do you want to do when the mouse comes over this? You might want the color to be, I want the color to invert. Then I want the border color to be black. And I want the border to be black as well. So let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. So you can see the effects that I've been able to create. So of course, if this was another web, this is you designing website now. This is how it is. So instead of me repeating the same thing, you already have the video for this. So I just needed to show you something different. So everything we just did now is already available in the previous video. This, what we are doing now, is just to explain how we did that. The next thing is I don't want to repeat this one again because that's the same method. So you could do this as an assignment to achieve this purpose. Now you can do it as an assignment. Let's move on to the next thing. I will just delete everything I've done now, and let's move on to the next section. So let's clear everything we've done so that we can prepare the styling for the next session. Remove the helper class. So we are done with this one. We can then make this visible and see this section. Yes, this section is, hope you remember what I call this section. This is like a banner section. This banner most of the time on sites would display the information, pictures of what's happening, events and things like that. So in this case, they've decided to use it to do a tracking to make it work more than a banner. You can also interact with it. The interesting thing about this banner is that we use positioning to position this item here. And the reason why we did that, you could use grid for virtually anything, right? But we just decided to use positioning so that you guys will get the concept of what's going on. So let's quickly redesign this quickly. So I come here and I do my div to start, and instead of calling it banner, I can just call it X banner. And the idea is I want to restyle it from the beginning and explain, myself as we do it. So let me just say hello to see if it's working. So we have our hello here. It's actually showing something. So this banner will be this container. So let's go ahead and style our X banner here. We'll just minimize all this one we've done to give us room for us to see what's going on. And this is just a box, so this is very simple to do. This box is very simple, so just do a box. And now we're going to use different color. Remember, I did quite a lot of things the other time. I introduced something different, which is linear gradients, to do gradients. So this one is just a quick one. You can use it as a quick win in your project to just do something fancy. So instead of just bringing background image, which can be boring, you can use something like this. So I do 180 degree, and I also explain the format, for you guys, the parameter, where you can then put 2 colors. By the way, you can put 10 colors, as many colors as you want. So you can flow from red to green, and it's going to turn that into a gradient for you. But because we don't have the height, so let's just manually fix the height now. Later we'll change the height, just for you to see what's going on there. So Do you see what's happening with the gradient? That's the power of this, just this one line. It's called linear gradient. So it allows you to do this kind of gradient. This is the angle in which you want it to tilt in. In the video, I was struggling to get a very perfect angle from white to what we need. So you can have something like this as well. So you can see that it's going from white to whatever you need there. So you can have 90-degree, you can have 45-degree. So you can play with what you want here. You can have 145, you can have 180. Okay, I like this 180. So it flow from top. But now let's now be serious now and go with what we want. So I want this color, and I also want it to end with that color. Okay, it's not looking good. Okay, so let's just stay with this. Okay, moving on. I think I would like it to tilt 195. Okay, let's move on now quickly. So we've been able to do this kind of a thing. The next thing we want to do, let me add one more white. Yes, so we have 2 whites and 1 other color. So how do we go ahead and put these other things that we wanted to do? This is just to give us a background look. Let's go ahead and start doing what we need to do. We already know how to do this list, so I won't redesign this list again. What I just need to do is to do 2 boxes. I will not design this content. I will just do 2 boxes. So I'm just focusing on the obvious things that are difficult to do. So I'm going to do 2 boxes and put 1 box here. So let's go ahead and talk about the boxes we want to put. So the first box is the one that contains the form. So I'll call this form box, and this is supposed to be a box, or rather it's supposed to be a form. And the second one is supposed to be what? Our image. I'll call it image box. Then I'll say image. So those are the 2 things I want to do. But remember that when we are dealing with, because we want to use absolute and relative to position these 2 elements, one on the left and one on the right, or one sitting somewhere so that we can move this one anywhere we want. So remember that when we are doing positioning, we said absolute allow you to move anywhere within relative. So we need to make, the child element, we need to make it relative. So it depends on whatever you want to do. You can either make this X banner relative so that you can then make image box absolute and move it around the X banner. That's what we want to do. So anyhow you want to put your form is fine, right? You can place your form anyhow. When you are done with your form, because your form is fixed, it flows with the website. You don't have issue moving your form because that's the way the form will move. Is the image now you want to force into a place, so you have concern about how your form can be related. So let's go ahead and set the fact that the X banner is relative. And what we did in relative was just to set the class to relative. That's all we did. We already defined that. You just say relative and you set the positioning and you tell it's relative. That's all. Nothing special there. And what you've just done by doing this is that you said this is a relative element, such that absolute can now be based on the relative element. Absolute is always based on relative element. So I will do absolute here, absolute, so that I can go and define what an absolute is and give it its own details. So now that we've defined absolutes, let's now create a helper class so that we'll see the barrier around it. We'll see what is happening around it. So quickly notice the absolute. Do you see that the absolute is totally small, right? Is allowing you to, you can move around, you can move it anywhere you want. By the way, we've not start moving it, but we can move it anywhere we want. So if I want to start moving it now, I will just decide the positioning. So what are we moving? Image box. I'll just decide the positioning of how I want to move my image box. So that's how I now said right. You know, we're moving it to the right. I will now say right is what? When you say right is 0, you move it to the extreme right. So imagine your image was there. Your image is going to then contains the image, just for it to be more visible to you guys. Let me make it big, so that you will see it more visible there. So your image will sit right there, but you know that the image is sitting on the bottom, so you can move it, say bottom 0, so it will move just down as you move it. So that's how we're able to move this image and move it on the banner. So you can see that it's not the banner is just sitting right on the banner. So if anything happened to this banner tomorrow, what I mean anything, you decide to change the width of the banner to 100. 100 looks too small. Let's say 300. So notice that as we change the banner to 300, the image is still is absolute to the relative parent. That's the advantage. It follows it wherever it goes. And if you try to also adjust your screen, it also does that, follows it with the way it is. So that's how we're able to achieve this section here. So if you look at if you review the video again, you will see that method being explained. So let's move on to the next tricky part. Let's also go ahead and delete all this section. So we're done with this part. So let's see. So I remove this section and I make the next section visible. Okay, so this next section is straightforward. I don't know if I will explain it more, but let me just see how it is. It's a grid system. So let me just, for the purpose of just explaining, let me just quickly do that quickly. So it's a grid system which is 1 to 1, right? 1 row and 2 column. That's what I did. I remember that I did 3 column. So the third one just stayed in the middle and it was just blank. So let's go ahead and it's straightforward. So the requirement to creating a grid is the fact that you have a container. So I'll just say S grid. You will have a parent and it will have siblings, right? It will have siblings. So what are the siblings that it's having? You don't need to give it a class name if you don't want. So I'll say image 1. Then I will say space. Then the last one I will say write up. Right? So how do I need to start defining this section? So I can just start by, let's give it a helper class so that we can see what we are doing, right? So let's now start defining what is S grid. Remember the requirement, you have to tell it that it's a grid by changing the display property to a grid. And now that we've done that, the next thing is to now specify. Remember, we're not using template area because it's not complex. It's just 3 column. It's not complex. So how do you just go ahead and do that? We use grid template column. You just tell it that make it by this size, and that's all. So I want to do one FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. Do you see that? So this is it. So you just put the first image in this section, you put the space in where the space is, you put the other one on that section, and you're good to go. So what I did was just to adjust this to say if this was 3, 3, so this one maybe I will say is 0.5 and or something. So I'm just playing with this to give me a proper space that I need, so that this one will be blank space, my image can stay and my write up can stay. That is all. This one is the easiest. So this is another form of using column, or rather using grid. This grid is the easiest because it just allows you to put things in the group. So you can even do 2 by 1 row, that's 2 column by 1. You can do as any sophisticated thing that you want. So depending on the number of elements that you have here, is what will determine what this is. So let's move on. This is straightforward. You know how to put your image here already. You go and do your write-up here, and the space just happens to be the space. Moving on to the next thing. Let's clear this section. So the next one happens to be this call to action. I don't think I will explain this call to action. Is also basic, nothing too difficult. What we did was also a column, right? We did a grid and column. So we just place one item here, one item here. The same method we did here was what we did there. So you can see how you are using one method to do quite a lot of things. So you can use, the reason why we use other method was so that you can see that those things are possible to do. And sometimes one method is that particular method is the only way you can achieve a better result. Like now, this one here, if you use grid for this, it might not turn out well for this section. So that's why I use absolute and relative for that approach. Moving on, let's see what part I want to explain again. Yes, very importantly, this section, this is very interesting. This one here, we call it card, but there's really nothing so serious. It's just that you being able to see a design and you being able to interpret it and design it based on the things that you know. So this is fairly simple because there's nothing different that we've done so far. It's just you understanding how to place the element and design what you need to do. So let's try and replicate it quickly. So I'll just come in here and do it on top. So let me see where I am. I'm at the bottom here. I should be at the top of it. I want to do it from the top. So we'll replicate it here. What we want to do a small card. So how does card works? Let me do a new file and call it card. Let's do something totally different, right? And I'll just quickly pick this site and duplicate it. But this time around, I'm gonna have a helper class that's gonna make the font size very big. Okay. So we don't need any of this. So I want to show you what we did in that card section. So we want to design the card. The card is a way for you to display your information in a very nice way, and we have a lot of sites using this. You have a lot of sites using the card system. Even Instagram uses this card kind of a feature that you have. So you have to take into consideration 4 things when designing a card. You have the image, you have the title, you have the description of what it is you're trying to portray, and you have your link. Obviously, all this information will be in a container, and that container is best to title it card because that just sounds right. So after this has been done, the next thing is to start turning this into elements. So your image obviously is going to be your image element. Then your title can be what? Your title should be H1. Your description can just be a paragraph. Your link obviously will end up being an anchor, core elements. Okay, so I have my link. So now that this has been done, you know that we then need to start styling and see what happens. So let's start styling. Before we start, let's bring in our image so that it can help us to see how our styling will look like. Looking at the design that we have, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you have a card? Is the border around it. So you need to set the border around it, and that's like very easy to do. So let's go ahead and start with our card, styling our card. So you go with our border on PX solid gray. That's very easy. The next thing is to have our border radius. This is also easy for us to do. One of the things that looks difficult is now notice the image on the top right side is moving outside the border. How do you make sure that the edge, the radius is in line with the radius of the border? You just repeat it for the image. You also set the image radius dimension as well. You can always do the same thing for the radius border. So how do you target the image within the card? You just do card image and specify border radius. But now we have an issue. The border radius applies to all the edges of the image. We just need to apply it to the top left and the top right. So let's do that. The top left and top right, and that should fix it. We have that fixed. Another thing comes to mind. The image is shooting far past the border size that we have here. So that means we need to set the width of the image to be 100%. That way it takes the size of the parent container. So if peradventure we change the width of the container of the grid of the card to any width, it will automatically fit in place. So that's a good thing we have going for us there. The next thing is that we have our title, description, and link staying at the edge of the card. It shouldn't be. It should have like its own container so that we can place it properly well. We can place it, can fit well inside the body of the card. So how can we do that? How can we move all these three elements around? Is by having it inside its own container. So we can create its own container and call it a name called card body. So the purpose of this is so that we can start the content and move the content, in the position that we wish. In this case, we just put it in the middle. So we'll provide a class rule for this, and we specify padding. Padding top is top to be 0, right to be 20 px, bottom to be 20 px, and left to be 20 px. So the reason why we don't need to worry about the top is because the H1 itself has its border on top, or rather the H1 itself has top padding and bottom padding set by default. So we are done. This is how our card will look like. So you can set this on multiple columns. So your card can just be like this, and then you duplicate this as in multiple columns, as many as you want, and that will just work. You just need to change the content and everything should look nice and good. So we've just finished talking about this card. The next thing we need to talk about is, let me see what are the things that we're missing. So I think the last thing is footer. Yes, the last thing is footer. This one we already talked about it, so it's easy to design. Or rather, we use grid to achieve this. We use grid. So the last thing we have on the bottom, I will not also do any code in there. I will just explain it. What we did was to create 4 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what we did. So let me show you that so that you see all the columns. So we have a footer. This whole thing is the footer. And then we have a container. What the container does is to put it in middle. Then inside it, we have a footer grid, because we want to make this a grid. So we have it called grid. The first div is for this one. You know that when you have a grid system, every element inside it becomes your element or becomes your child, and then it will just fall in place. So you can see all the elements 1, 2, 3, 4. It just fits into place. And how did it fit into place? Because of the templates you must have specified inside form for footer grid. So look at what we did here. I specify each of them are equal. 1F, 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 and 5. Even if I don't specify it, if I just make it auto, they will just fit into those places. So that's why I specify how I specify 4 columns. I just did them 1FR times 4, and then I have this feature. So the part of the design of the website didn't have anything here, and that's why it was just standing like that. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.